News at 4:30.
A communication breakdown is apparently to blame for the chaotic scene on the CTA Blue Line last week. Hundreds of passengers, frustrated by a lack of information, evacuated those trains following an equipment problem. Chicago Mayor Richard Daley said today the CTA needs to do a better job of communicating.
And the mayor adds that he is not blaming anyone, but he points out the city's Office of Emergency Management was not informed about that Blue Line breakdown until an hour after it happened. ABC 7's Paul Monkey joins us with more about what was said today about improving the lines of communication. Paul?
Linda, what happened last Tuesday morning began as a mechanical problem on a 40-year-old rail car. It was an electrical short that's usually fixable in short order, but this time the fix didn't work, and one thing led to another. The CTA acknowledges that communication with passengers on 4 trains stopped in the subway was inadequate, and because this began as a simple mechanical problem, nobody called the fire department for nearly an hour, a failure that displeased the mayor.
Thank God no one was injured. Thank God no one was killed. And that's what we just want to avoid everything. I'm not trying to blame anyone. I'm just saying I think we all can do a better job.
Since they weren't notified for nearly an hour, firefighters didn't arrive in the tunnel until after some angry passengers had decided to self-evacuate. From now on, whenever a train has a problem underground, OEMC will be called right away. It doesn't mean that firefighters will be immediately dispatched, but if it rises to an emergency, they'll be ready to roll. Problem 2 was the failure to keep passengers fully up to date.
We needed to be informed more on what was going on and how long this was going to take and when we were going to get out of there.
Passengers on one of the 4 stopped trains in the subway said they kept hearing the train operator announce for nearly an hour and a half that they'd be moving shortly. They got fed up and exited the train. The CTA acknowledges communication failure, saying there was so much traffic on CTA radios that messages were garbled and lost. The plan now is to equip train operators with special cell phones operable in the tunnel as another means to communicate with the CTA control center.
We're adding the phone specifically so we can coordinate with the specific train operators in those areas to make sure they're making the right kind of announcements. And what we had here was inconsistent. So on some of the trains we were making great announcements and there were no issues. And then on another train we weren't making good announcements and we clearly saw an issue. And so there's a human element to all of this that we have to get right.
Some riders, though, say train operators were working cell phones, but information was still lacking. The CTA says it's going to launch new training in emergency procedures for all of its train operators. What it does not intend to do is reinstitute the presence of conductors on trains in the subways.
I can't understand why the CTA refuses to do something that I think is just a no-brainer that gives the comfort to the passengers, not to mention gives an extra pair of eyes and ears and hands to help you out.
The CTA says it will not revisit the conductor issue. It does have on order new rail cars with much more sophisticated communication gear. The first of those cars won't arrive until 2010. In the meantime, the CTA is exploring other ways to improve communication in the subway were this situation to repeat itself. That could include portable speakers, some way to get the message to people in cars if their train operators can't.
Right.
Work in progress.
Okay, and there's more, Paul. The CTA also had some trouble with the red line last night. A southbound train derailed as it was leaving the Howard Street station. The power had to be shut off so the passengers could get off the train safely. That derailment also affected the purple and the yellow line trains, which also use the Howard Street station. Shuttle buses then were brought in trying to get those passengers to where they needed to go. Now, no one was hurt, but it did cause some headaches. CTA crews worked overnight to get the derailed train back on the tracks in time for the morning rush. However, it is still unclear at this hour what caused that derailment.